Welcome back to Soma Psyche. We're here to do the demo video about proprioception. So if you didn't see the other video about proprioception, I encourage you to go back and watch that first. But in this video, we want to talk about the clinical application of the proprioceptive sense and give you some demonstrations, some example of how that could be worked with in an actual session with a client.
Yes, and why, how much space you take up in the world matters. One of the things that I'd encourage viewers to kind of play with is we're going to do like an experiment of what it feels like to take up space. And I'd be curious what it's like for viewers to do this maybe with us or feel even the feelings of imagining doing it wherever they are. Yes. If you're in your office, if you're in a coffee shop, if you're at home, noticing the difference of like how much space you can take up and then what that feels like might be a very interesting kind of experiment to do along with us. So, all right. Do you want to kind of take the reins?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
So I think what I want to offer is that there are points in our clinical work, especially with people that have a history of trauma, especially if that trauma has been at all physically violent or in some ways invasive to their personal self, that almost everybody at some point, it's going to be relevant to explore with them how they feel about taking up space in their world. This is very relevant for relationships, things like assertiveness, expression of needs, but also simply feeling like we have power in our life to create and affect change. So there's a lot of reaccessing vital energy, just the feeling of like having energy for life. That is really relevant to this work because a lot of our clients struggle with lack of hope that manifests as despair and this kind of physical collapsing in on oneself. And so being able to work with the proprioceptive sense is one way of accessing how that is stored in the body schemas, the maps of our experience in our body, and creating opportunity for disconfirming experience that can really shift some of those templates. So just by way of an easy example that I feel like is accessible to all of us, I did this yesterday in a very tiny office. You don't need a lot of space. And one thing I'll say about this is that whenever we're inviting clients to try something new in this way, we are always checking in with safety and remembering that we have lots of options for titration, meaning
like a million,
like so many. So one example, we're going to actually experience this together in this video, which is you could do this with me, or you could simply watch my body do it and notice the reaction that you have in your own system as you watch me take up space, right? So the other thing that's going to happen is a bit of another sense, which is the intercorporeal sense, meaning the dynamics between two bodies. And in this instance, we're going to observe together between you and I, but also the viewers observe what happens in our embodiment when one body is much smaller than another body. And one body, and maybe we can kind of play with this and exaggerate it, as I take up more space, you shrink.
Yeah, I already feel like neuronal systems firing.
Yes, you're like, oh, I know this template. I'm familiar with it, right? And remembering that all of this is not just metaphor, but it is the actual embodiment of our personality. And so with our clients, we can look at what does their body naturally do? How do they naturally function in this space? And then what does it mean to invite them to occupy space in a different way? So a very straightforward example would be having a client that tends toward a more collapsed posture, meaning rounded spine, slumped shoulders, drooped head, maybe head forward position, lowered eye contact, shallow breathing. This is a body that I would say spends most of its time in a collapsed, smallening position, meaning there's a rotation inwards to take up as little space as possible. And one of the explorations around that is, why does that posture make the most sense for their survival in their history and in their lived experience. We can make a lot of assumptions about why that would be.
And that would be explored with the client.
Yes.
Like, can we explore that together?
That's right.
Why?
That's right.
Not just say, you're collapsed, you must have had X, Y, and Z.
Right. Yeah. And conversely, we can explore what does it feel like to that client to maybe at first imagine and then secondarily observe and then maybe even participate in getting big. Mm-hmm. So one way that you can do this with a client is using your own body, which I'm going to demonstrate here. So imagining that you're the client in a collapsed position, like just, yes, a natural, relaxed, but pretty collapsed position. And as a therapist, I could offer to that client to simply observe my body taking up more space. And I would narrate for them what I'm going to do before I do it, because that increases safety and gives context. So what I'm going to do is stand up, and I am going to occupy as much space as my body can, which means I'm going to stand in a starfish position. And for the viewers, you're going to mostly just see like my body and Caleb's body in relationship to the bigness of mine. And just notice, how does your body respond to that? Because we have mirror neurons that do a lot of activating just by observation. And so you'll observe how your body feels. I'll observe how mine feels, and the viewers can see how it feels to them to watch it. You ready? Okay. Yeah. All right. So as I get bigger, everybody just noticing how this feels. And as I take up the largest stance that my body is capable of, I'm going to stand here for just a moment. And I'm going to take a big deep breath and expand the core of my body to its maximum capacity. And if we wanted to play with this even further, we can get big with our voice as well. We can project, we can take up more space with our voice. So just noticing for a second how that impacts your own sense. Okay, and now I'll come back. Here I come. So, how was that?
Well, my fingers, I feel like I noticed my fingers the most because you went up and I went back. And so I was holding myself with my hands gripped on my leg and just like, ooh. I also thought like how my brain went to like, this is crazy to be a child like this at one point. Like everything is that big.
Everything is that big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed also my breath, like when you went like this, my breath went, and then I just kind of held it. And it was just kind of there, like, okay.
So if you could notice that the intake of breath, the pause at the top of your breath, and the pause, the holding, and make just a little bit of meaning slowly, like what comes up?
It feels like preparing for action.
Oh,
like
okay.
You're really big and I'm really small. And so I'm going to but I'm just going to hold that like in case I need to like do something, which is so funny because we're in such a safe space. We're like in one of the safest spaces of my life. So then it's like weird that it feels odd to say that. But at the same time, that's just my body schema of like, okay, what do I need to, if you fall, do I need to catch you? Do I need to dodge? Like, what am I? Right. Yeah.
So in that activation pattern, I'll offer an interpretation and you check and see, like, does that resonate? And then how would you edit it to make it fit more? So as I'm imagining that intake of breath, the leaning back, the watching, there's this sense of preparing for action, but also breath holding, which is stillness, right? So there's a increase of tension without release, right? So I have the activation, but I'm not doing anything with it yet.
It's pre-activation.
It's pre-activation. I'm just right there at the edge of it. And I stay there. When did it resolve for you? And how would you change it to make it fit more?
It resolved. And I'd be curious to watch the video to know if this if this like looks correct. But I felt it when you like took your arms in and you looked and you smiled. And there was like that coming down.
Yeah. It's like, okay, it's about to be over.
Yeah. Like, okay, I don't have to hold this like posture anymore where I'm kind of leaning back and
looking up. Yeah. I'm curious, why did you feel compelled to look up?
It would have felt so I don't know, looming would be the word.
Mm-hmm.
Like to just have been like looking at the camera. Like I would have known that there was something taking up a lot of space over here. Mm-hmm. And that then felt like the most important thing to look at. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in a therapeutic sense, you can imagine how activating this can be for somebody that has a history of power dynamics, of violence, of domination, of feeling small. Mm-hmm. So even in that example of what is the strategy, your strategy when encountering something large and looming is to look at it and prepare for action, but hold still. Mm-hmm. Don't do anything.
Yeah.
I could
play cool,
right? Yeah. But I'm just going to hold steady right here.
It's very observational, Caleb in childhood. Very
I am full of activation, but not action, right? Yeah. There's a readiness and a held tension in the body, but a slowness to take action, which might be my knowing you projecting some in there. But as far as making sense together of how that feels, that resonates for you, and that also makes sense in my observation of what it felt like to be next to you in that. But that's not the only pattern that could have emerged. There are other individuals that their response to being in the room with a large body would have been to look away, would have been to further into collapse. There's also people that would have leaned way back and felt the urge to gesticulate more, right? To engage with the bigness, right? So all of those are demonstrations of the unique strategies that that individual developed based on their environmental experience and what resources they held internally to deal with whatever that sensed threat was.
Yeah. And in therapy, like I feel like my gut intuition would be to, if we were able to get there where I could stand up and we could process that dynamic, I would then play with the efferentation of the body. So what does the brain and the body feel like is like another strategy we could try, and then to sit with it and see how that feels. So if you were still standing up and I was you, I'd say, what does your body want to do? Like, what's the gut impulse?
Yes.
And it may be to like pull away and stand up. So then I would invite, does that feel like something we could try? And if they tried it, I'd be like, okay, what do you notice? How does that shift the space, the zone that you are? And do we like that better? Now we know it's possible to do that. Does that feel more resonant to you as a human than to do this?
Well, and like in an example of a couples therapy session, this can be incredibly powerful because you have two bodies that have made sense together a million different times and have activated these very specific body schemas together. And even playing with the dynamics of the posture of hugging, right? Of, you have certain individuals. It's so fascinating to watch people and how they approach for a hug. So interesting to me. So you have individuals that when they go to hug, it's like a lunge over, right? It's like I am now consuming you in this hug. And then you have people that it's like exactly the opposite. It's like, all right, I'm barely receiving this, and then you have people that it's all about equanimity, right? We got to match perfectly, right?
Yeah. And then you're sizing.
And then, which way are we going to go? Is it the left, right, or the right, left? All of that is part of the way that bodies have learned to be safe together and to navigate the tension between needing autonomy and space, right? Needing my safety, but then also desiring contact and intimacy and closeness. All of those dynamics are present in, parent-child dynamics, partners, friends, like they're everywhere. And so playing with this and feeling together, how does my body actually respond when they come at me that way, right? Do I feel a sense of invitation, of desire, of longing, of warmth, or is it kind of like, and feeling that together? And in order to do that, the tools that we can use are slowing everything down, doing all of this kind of in slow motion with this perpetual checking in and self-observation, slow to meaning making, right? We're not just moving into story
playful
really quickly.
Try and then feel the response.
Yes.
Playful try, feel the response.
That's right. And I think when we're able to slow down, invite, check in, and the other thing is playing with exaggerations, right? Of feeling like, okay, if I normally sit small, how far do I actually want to take that?
Yeah.
Right. If social acceptability was not a factor, if I could just really exaggerate and lean into that movement, I'm currently working with a pattern in my own body that I find really relevant. I went and had a massage, and she said, do you know that your rotator cuff in your right shoulder is rotated inwards? I'm like, no, I didn't know that. This explains some sensations I've been having lately. And I'm curious, like, why is that rotating in? It could just be a purely mechanical thing of like, that's the way I sleep. But I'm me, so I'm not satisfied with that answer. So one of the ways that I'm playing with that is, as I can sense it, what happens if I begin to exaggerate that roll in, right? What is my shoulder trying to do? And as I do that, the point that I've gotten so far is, what in the world am I turning away from? Right? There is a sensation of a move away and a blocking whatever is coming at me. And I'm doing it with my right side, which is very relevant to me because our heart is situated on our left. And our right side holds our sympathetic masculine do-go energy. So here I come with a protective stance around and blocking. And how far does that want to go? About right there, right? I can hold that. And in what situations do I actually want to sit like that? So that's what I'm currently tracking about that tiny awareness of, I have a inner rotation of the shoulder that just kind of perpetually wants to be like that. And we work with that by offering exaggeration and letting it go as far as it wants to. And then noticing what meaning slowly and organically bubbles up as I hold that position and let my body talk to me.
Yeah, I love the word tracking. I think that feels so important. Can we track, not just like know it all at once? We don't find the animal with the first paw print, but can we kind of like follow the breadcrumbs or track the trail of where is my body going? And then what is it noticing in the space of its world that it's responding to when it does that? That feels so grounding, is like this is possible in therapy.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I feel like it's incredibly honoring to so much of the information, the clues that the body leaves for us. Yeah. That if we will slow down and listen and pay attention, it is very willing to communicate and even desirous of change when we have honored the reality of what is currently being held. And that to me is kind of the heart and soul of working in a somatic way in therapy. I just love it. So,
well, thank you for joining us. Hopefully you played along, whether that's feeling with us and just sitting there, or actually trying it with your own body in the space that you're inhabiting. Next video, we're going to talk about 2 more systems, the exteroceptive and the neuroceptive systems. That's a term coined by Stephen Porges in polyvagal theory. We're going to talk about those 2 systems together and then give another demonstration of how that may look in therapy. So stay tuned, join us there. Also go back and watch other videos if you want, and we'll see you in the next space.